Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. Alright, so I want to talk about the Lakers a little bit, man, because we really did have a good win last night. We really did, man. I listened back to my video reacting to it. I also listened to everyone else, of course, and just listen to myself. But really what I took from that game yesterday was just understanding that you really can utilize this team better than we have. That's what it really comes down to. And that's what I'm trying to explain to a lot of people who are on the fence about whether or not the roster is pretty solid versus whether or not we actually need a new coach. Some people are really adamant about getting a new coach, and it's just a lot of different opinions. But one of the opinions that I definitely don't agree with is that this team can't be utilized better by someone else. You know, I mean, that's kind of the opinion, but more so just utilize better, period. Maybe Darvin could just use some help organizing this roster in a way that makes it make more sense. I don't look at this roster, and I've heard other analysts who are much more experienced basketball minds than me say the same thing. I don't look at this as the most complicated Laker roster in the world. I don't, man. Yeah, you got some one-way players. Yeah, you have some issues with injuries, which have made things a little complex, but it's not as complicated as the coach makes it look. For me, you just got to keep a good balance of shooting and ball handling on the floor with AD and Bron. I think what complicates things for us a lot of the time is our coaches need to always play Taurean Prince, and the overusage and the underutilization of some of the other guys surrounding AD and Bron. Overusing Taurean Prince means that you're going to always have shooting on the floor with Taurean, but you're also going to be limited with ball handling with him. He doesn't particularly make others better defensively, which is what I was talking about. The opposite was for a guy like Vanderbilt last night, being utilized properly, having him on the floor for 21 minutes, even though his stats were bad. He makes everybody else great defenders. You're going to see Austin be a better defender with Vando on the floor, because Vando's going to play such great on-ball defense till Austin's help duties become a lot more feasible. Bron's help duties become a lot more feasible. AD doesn't have to cover as much defensively, although I don't love them in the lineup at the same time. I really don't. But if you put them on the floor with three shooters, then it's not so bad. I don't like them on the floor with Bron together. Maybe I like them more so on the floor if you have to go to Austin, Russell lineups. Like if I got Austin and Russell on the floor together, I hate that most of the time. But if I have AD and Vando on the floor at the same time with that lineup, it probably is a whole lot of crazy, but they can offset one another's weaknesses as pairs. You know, the shooting with your backcourt with Austin and Reeves can offset the lack of shooting in your backcourt with AD and Vando. So you see what I'm saying? So it's like, those are the type of complications that I think Darvin is having trouble with, because you want to keep certain players on the floor, but they can't play with other people in certain situations. So it's like, it can be complicated, but not as complicated as it appears he is making it. And that's really what I'm saying to you. But because he has it in his mind that he has to play Cam Reddish a certain amount of minutes, and he doesn't like playing Christian Wood in certain situations, so it just makes it more hard, because he has certain players that he either really wants to play or really doesn't want to play, and a lot of times those players should probably be used in different ways to make everything else come together properly. And that's the problem. That's the problem when your preference is to never play Christian Wood, but the roster is set up for Christian Wood to probably play like 25 minutes next to AD, replacing Bron. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't never want to start Austin Reeves at the point guard, but you need to start, or rather have Austin Reeves play some primary point guard when Russell sits down. You know what I mean? He want to use him as a tool, but maybe it's because you don't use Jalen Hood-Schifino properly, you don't have some of the continuity that would otherwise allow you to not play Austin at the point guard, if that makes any sense. It's like, if you're not going to use Jalen and try to groom him as your primary backup point guard to D'Lo, then it slots all of your other pieces a little differently, because now you got to ask for guys to make up for that. So it's like, Darvin complicates the roster because of his preferences of the players on it. If he used the roster the way it was designed to be used, using everybody in their position properly for what it is that they're designed to do, this roster is much easier to use. And that's why I often say that GMs and coaches need to communicate more to help one another with one another's jobs, and to more importantly, know exactly what the roster was designed to be. Because if you have this idea that you want to play, you never want to play Christian Wood, and you always want to play Taurean Prince, you're changing everybody else's role to a degree. You don't never want to play Jalen Hood-Schifino, and you never want to put Austin at the point guard. Now you got to change everybody else's role on the team so that it make a little more sense of what it is that they were ultimately brought there to do. So it's like, these are the type of things that make it a complicated roster when it really ain't that complicated. He just don't want to use who he has a lot of the time. And he's like, I'm searching for what works. It's like, no, you're not. You're searching for what works for you. You're not searching for what works for the team, because if you did use what these players are brought here to do, you'd find that they would all complement one another very simply. They really do. And so that's the irony of the whole situation. In my humble opinion, I do think, and this is going to sound kind of strange, but I really do think that we drafted Jalen Hood-Schifino to be the backup point guard. I really do think that. And he probably should be getting about 10, 15 minutes a night. The problem is, and this ain't Darvin's fault, Jalen started the season hurt. So it's to where he would probably be worked into the equation by now. Now we're trying to work him in. And, and it's just derailed the entire roster. And see, I got to shoot Darvin some bells to say that has been really what it is. A lot of the guys that we're supposed to be utilizing and having continuity with, they've been hurt all year. They started the season hurt. Rui hasn't been able to play his role, so that changes other people's roles. And maybe they don't play well with one another. So I get it. The injury issues, when you break down what it is I just said, can really throw things off when you consider one player has to either complement or be considered a detriment to another. On a roster like this, with injuries being the case, players needing development, some of those players that are in need of development has been missing time with injury. The Gabe Vincent piece and how much Darvin would like to utilize him more. It would make more sense if he was in place to more or less make it so that you don't have to play Austin at the one. Start Austin if D'Lo's down. You don't have to go to Jalen as your backup two, as to which you look crazy for not. When Vincent's down there, you don't, or that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Not to say he looks crazy for not using Jalen, but when you have the problems we have based on what it is Jalen is and who you want Austin not to be, you should have been using Jalen when Austin was out. I mean, when D'Lo was out. I know what I'm saying is kind of more, it sounds more complicated than I actually think it is. But at the end of the day, as I've said many times, we're just asking players to do a little more than what they're ready to do based on the development levels that they're in right now. And when you consider the fact that we don't have the Dennis Schroeder piece, you don't have some of the guys we had last year that had a bit more experience, it does become a situation where you're looking at a team, say, okay, you got young players relying upon young players to make up for young players' mistakes. You're never going to actually have that continuity and that cohesiveness that maybe a Russell Westbrook, who's been in the league for a million years and all these different things that he's done, even though he has his mistakes that he's made, he did bring a certain pressure on the rim that you can count on, rebounding prowess that you can count on. At times he defended big players. You could throw him on those guys in small ball lineups and get away with it at times. It's just certain things that you could rely upon, for better or for worse, with a guy like Russell Westbrook than you can with only having Austin Reeves and D'Lo in your backcourt. And D'Lo brings different problems to the table as it pertains to, he's not a strong player. You can't really count on him to defend guys at a high level based on his lack of physicality, or, you may be able to rely upon him shooting the three, but he has nights where he's going to go 1 for 6 from behind the arc. As to which that reliability then becomes a detriment if you're asking him to do it and need it. So it's like, I think Darvin Ham has had trouble adjusting to the issues that this roster provides in the fullness of what I said with the injuries. I don't know that I probably see that being the problem with a different type of coach who has more experience, because he's just going to rely upon traditional rotations and live with the mistakes that may come with players not being able to do certain things to his liking based on the continuity that comes together with playing players in position when guys are out, if that makes any sense. So, like, if I have a problem with Austin Reeves' defense, but I don't have D'Lo out there and I don't have Rui out there, I'm going to live with Austin's defensive deficiencies and count on what he could bring to the table offensively, instead of saying I just can't start him. Let me go with a small forward lineup that focuses all on defense, because I can't stand the fact that we have holes defensively with him on the floor. Well, you also have shooting issues on the floor with that small forward lineup on the floor. You also have ball handling issues with that small forward lineup on the floor. And because you have guys playing out of position, now you're asking them to do things that they're not supposed to be asked to do, which then creates another problem for you, or several problems for you. So it's like the fact that you don't want to live with Austin's deficiencies as a point guard makes it so that you're creating more problems for the roster itself by utilizing certain players completely out of position and then being okay with the mistakes or the deficiencies that come with that. So it's like, which deficiencies are you willing to live with, and how many of them are you opening up, being unable to live with the ones that you would get traditionally if you just play people in position? You see what I'm saying? It's like you cover one hole up and you open up 7 others, which is never something you want to do. But somehow, some way, our coach manages, and we end up losing. And that's what ends up happening. It's like, maybe it's just an eyesore for him to see Austin Reeves start at the point guard for whatever deficiency reasons or what have you. But should it not be an eyesore for all the other problems that open up for not? And so that's kind of the problems the Lakers have run into with this coach. It's just how he approaches these type of situations that ultimately leaves us with the team being utilized in ways that it isn't best for the team. And it's frustrating the guys. So it's like that's one of the holes that he's being comfortable with living with, I guess, when he looks in the mirror, is my guys are unhappy with their roles. As to where all you got to do is put guys in their roles, whether people are missing or not, live with the deficiencies that come naturally with that, and you don't have half the holes with your continuity and the happiness of your players. They just understand that they can't do certain things. Maybe even finding yourself getting better at those deficiencies because guys will have the continuity of continuing to do what it is they're supposed to do, whether guys are there or not. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, which holes are you willing to live with? Because you're costing yourself wins any damn way. You might as well live with the holes that come naturally with what it is that you're supposed to be doing if things are done traditionally, you see? So that's really what it is. Sometimes coaches, in their creativity and the pressure of having to win and the pressure of having to live up to the culture of the team they're coaching or whatever, which is for us, is, you know what it is. You end up having situations, and I take this from somewhere else, where you end up overcorrecting. Like, okay, we can't do this. No, we got to do this. No, you don't have to do that, because that's going to open up 3 more holes. You only have 1 hole with this problem. Just live with that hole. And if we lose, you lose. But at least you don't have people unhappy with their roles while losing. Because if you make a decision that disrupts the team and it doesn't work, now you have them unhappy with their roles and losing. You see what I'm saying? So I honestly think Darvin Ham just learned that lesson. You know, it's much being said about what's wrong with Darvin Ham, but the question is he learning from these mistakes? And I was listening to Draymond Green this morning, and I encourage everybody to go check out Draymond Green's interview, or rather his soliloquy, where he was just talking about what just happened with him. And essentially what Draymond was saying was, you know, I'm not looking at the word help the same way. Not to get in a full conversation about him, get it back on the Lakers, but basically it's like, yo, I've learned from a certain mistake that I've always made that you may associate with who I am. This taught me that key lesson. I had a massive breakthrough in my thinking based on the word help and how I view it when it's being pointed at me. It's like, well, okay, I turn to Coach Ham and I say, are you having a breakthrough in your thinking based on all the pressure that's coming toward you for making the mistakes that you've made with the roster and seeing it trickle down to you almost losing your job? Because if so, maybe we can start seeing a breakthrough in how you manage the roster and never have to revisit some of the mistakes. Because see, the thing about it is, what we have to understand about Darvin Ham is that he's a rookie coach. Well, sophomore, but for me, the sophomore year is still a rookie year, to be honest with you. And so when you really consider it, there are things that he's going to have to learn that he will incorporate into who he's going to be permanently. A lot of mistakes that he's made are not a reflection of who he's going to be as a coach. These are the lessons that needed to be learned along the way. Along the way was 3 minutes ago when we was about to fire him last night. Has he learned? And so that's the question. Is he overcoming the mistakes, the specific mistake of trying to overcorrect with the roster, asking guys to play out of position and having it fail, versus asking guys to just be in the role that they were put there to be and living with the holes that are ultimately there naturally? I don't even want to try to talk over that. Y'all bear with me. They just opened this place. But that's really what I'm trying to say to you all. Darvin Ham is a young coach, new in his situation, and he's going to have to prove to the rest of the world of basketball that he's not going to make the same mistakes that he's already made, given the fact that he is still in a position of development. Is this going to be a reflection of who you are as a coach, or is this going to be one of those things that you got better at as a coach? And that's the question for Darvin. Because it almost cost him his job thus far, and it may still cost him his job if he doesn't start implementing some very strict consistency into the roles of the players on his team. Strict consistency. Groundhog Day, brother. So the only thing that'll save your job is if we don't see another change in the starting lineup for at least another 3-4 weeks. I don't care if the crap work or not. Keep Austin in his role. Keep D'Lo in his role, whether he likes it at this point or not. Don't change anything. Because at the end of the day, what people are tired of is the constant change. What's not working is your creativity leading to failure. Let what's supposed to be lead to whatever the results will be. And it's more simple. It's sort of like what I was told at work once. If you stick to the book, my boy Fred used to tell me this all the time. I don't sway from what's in the book at all. People look at me like I'm the biggest jerk, but I never sway from what it is in the book. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be their call. The people who wrote the book and those who want us to implement those rules, it's their call if things go right or wrong. I'm not creating nothing that's going to reflect poorly upon them. They are putting within me what the system will be, and I'm a reflection of their intentions so long as they're paying me to do so. In other words, if they tell me nobody can walk through this door, I ain't letting my mama through this door. Why? Because that's sticking to the book. And the book, they can't never say that something I did messed up their situation. What they'll have to do is hold accountability for themselves based on how people are unhappy with what it is that's in that damn book. And I'm telling you, that's Darvin's key. That's key to keeping your job. Maybe they tell you to think for yourself. Maybe they tell you to be creative. But when it comes to implementing changes to patch up holes, let that be on the GM's creation of the roster and how that may be a failure rather than you're trying to make up for his creativity being poor and the result in a loss. Because I can tell you right now, you play everybody in position every night, never change a rotation in your starting lineup. There may be instances where we look at you and say, yo, that does not work. You have to try to improvise. But if you're just improvising every day and it goes wrong, we ain't looking at the GM. You know what I'm saying? You implement new changes every day? Nah, because we're not seeing what he put together fail. We're seeing what you putting together fail. You see what I'm saying? So it's like there's a line there. And you got to find a sweet medium of balance in it to where, yes, if we're going up against the Timberwolves, we can't run the same lineup as if we go against the Clippers because the Timberwolves got 2 damn centers. Hell, 3 of them if you count Nas Reed. But if we're going up against teams, just regular teams, you ain't got to make such drastic changes based on their roster. Then I don't need to see you make drastic changes within the roles of the players on the team just based on whatever you decide. whatever you can't live with. And then live with that so that when it don't work, we're looking at the GM saying, why don't you patch these holes up? You see what I'm saying? Rather than seeing you try to patch them up for him, and then he get to blame you because of the mistakes you made that created new holes that he didn't create within the roster he put together. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, maybe I don't like the fact that Shaq can't hit free throws at a 75% clip. But if I bench Shaq based on my inability to be cool with him missing free throws, then of course my team's gonna suck. And ain't nobody gonna look at the GM and say, yo, why didn't you get a better free throw shooter? They gonna look at the coach and say, you an idiot for not playing Shaq. Now that's an extreme case. It came from my creativity in my mind right now, but I'm telling you, like, it's the same thing when you really consider it. You just gotta make sure you don't put yourself in a position to be the reason things don't work. If things don't work, stick to the book and let everybody else whose fault it is take that blame for that. Because what Darvin did was stood right there and in crosshairs. Did GM put together the greatest roster in the world? No. But are we blaming him for the roster's inefficiency to be successful? Hell no. Because Darvin's stepping in outside of the book to do things that the roster's not expected to do because he can't live with the holes that are naturally there within what it is that they're supposed to do, which is a flawed in nature anyway, based on the lack of talent that we may have. That's why I'm sticking to the script. This dude a point guard, he a point guard. I ain't putting him at the small forward. If this guy was paid to be the backup shooting guard, that's where he's gonna play. And if for some reason we missed the next guy, if Gabe Vincent's supposed to be the backup shooting guard, guess who's the next guy up? Who's the third string? That's gonna be my shooting guard. And I live with the results. If I need scoring, I'm not sitting my best scorers because they can't defend. That's a GM's fault. You know, that's his fault. He didn't get defensive players that could do both things. I'm going to put those guys on the floor until they leave a lot of holes open. At least they put on the floor to do the things they're good at. Christian Wood, he going to score. You know, we got this young player, Max Lewis. I ain't seen him but twice all season long. But we have offensive issues and he's an offensive scorer. What, you can't put him on the floor because you don't like his ball handling or something? Just by example, I don't know what it is. You don't like him because he doesn't have the efficiencies. Keep him on the floor. Because the more you play him, the better he's going to get whatever it is, or the more glaring his deficiencies will show, which will put it back on the GM. Why the hell did you trade up to get this guy in the draft? Like, these are the things, like, Darvin ain't leaving enough. He putting the target on him. And you best believe in this organization, bro, I've been watching him use people as scapegoats for 30 years. It ain't going to be the star's fault. It ain't going to be the owner's fault, brother. It's going to be yours. And they'll fire you just for trying to fix holes that they left there in the roster creation. Nah. That ain't how to approach being a Laker coach. Nah. Not unless you have the cachet, like a Phil Jackson, to where whatever you implement is already proven to be successful. And I think that's where he's going wrong. That Budenholzer crap, I'm going to be honest with you. It was successful, but just like I said about Darvin in the last game and getting us to the Western Conference Finals, you weren't successful. The Stars were successful. Giannis dragged Budenholzer to the finals. Budenholzer is whose Budenholzer was with the Atlanta Hawks without Giannis. So, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, don't be fooled into thinking that Darvin took us to the Western Conference Finals. AD and Bron took us to the Western Conference Finals. Darvin just happened to be coaching the team. And a guy like Darvin has to know the difference. You got to know the difference. Because people will give you credit for what you don't deserve, just like they're going to blame you for what's not your fault. And I'm telling you, I'm not looking at you saying you're a Western Conference Finals champion coach. I'm looking at that core saying, damn it, they didn't already proven to win once. How come they fell short in the Western Conference Finals? That's all. If you're doing what you're supposed to do. And so for me, it's like, man, don't take Budenholzer's system of weird crap, apply it to this team because he did a bunch of weird crap and it worked with Giannis on the roster one time and think that's going to work. That's Darvin's problem. He be trying to implement the drastic and bizarre ways of Budenholzer on this roster. And I told y'all, before I even knew of Darvin Ham on Budenholzer's roster, I remember some of the stuff that Budenholzer used to do with the Bucks. And I told y'all, before it worked, that I didn't believe in it. When it started to work, I started to say, so that's what he wants to do. He's throwing a monkey wrench in everybody so that when you see Budenholzer's team, you don't know what quite you're going to run into. Okay. A broken clock works twice a day and ain't worked since because they fired him after that, did they not? So that's what I'm telling you. Don't try to bring forth Budenholzer's ways to a Lakers situation when you got entirely different pressures. This is not Milwaukee. This ain't our second NBA championship. Shaking up the roster because he did it that way, that's what he taught you. He taught you wrong. He gonna teach you how to get fired. You need to do things by the book here. So that all the pressure goes on Jeannie, all the pressure goes on Rob, all the pressure goes on AD LeBron to get us to the promised land. Don't let them scapegoat you as a rookie coach because you're doing too much, trying to make up for stuff that ain't really on you. That's what needed to be said to Darvin Ham about 4 weeks ago. And I'm telling you right now, you would never see another change in that starting lineup unless somebody's out. And if they out, it's going to be the next man up. I ain't kidding. The only time I'm making real changes is when it makes absolute common sense to do so. And that's when it becomes a question. Can you identify common sense? I hate to be disrespectful, but that's a real thing. And you identify when it makes sense to do something and when it doesn't. And Darvin got to answer that question going forward. He is. Because some of them decisions that he made creatively made me question his common sense identification, basketball-wise. If you're going to let people shoot 50 damn threes in a game and you don't change up your defense at all throughout the course of that game, it makes me wonder if you're identifying the common sense properly. And against the Dallas Mavericks, against the Memphis Grizzlies, against the Philadelphia 76ers, and several others, we saw that very thing. And we talked about it in our last Laker rant, where he would sit there and be worried about the hypotheticals of what could happen based on all overall expectations for a roster and what they may do against you affect him in a way where he's not stopping what's actually coming at him. Using John Morant as an example. John Morant was used as a decoy in that last game. He wasn't looking to score no 50 points. John Morant was sitting there creating space as a threat for Marcus Smart to shoot you down with 9 threes. If you don't identify somewhere throughout that game that Marcus Smart is shooting at a high clip with high volume and a good percentage, then you're going to get your butt whooped. It doesn't matter what you think could be coming. That ain't coming. He is. Raining threes on your head over and over and over again, and we did not adjust our defense at all to stop that. That cannot be what I consider common sense identification. Common sense identification says stop the hole that's bleeding. You want to cover the hole that's leaking, fam. Not be so fearful of a different hole possibly opening up while you leaving this one to bleed out. This man putting Band-Aids all over little scrapes. Fool, they got a gunshot. He getting out the little spray. You know what I'm saying? Like, fool, get them to the, man, call the doctor, man. Let's get this person to a hospital, please. That's the type of stuff that Darvin do. So when I say identify to me that you can utilize common sense, it means just that. You got to show me that you can actually identify when it makes sense to make improvs and when it does not. Because you have shown me that that is up for question repeatedly. And that's not, in my humble opinion, any movement in any direction other than the fact that you just didn't identify it, rather than you having less experience than the next coach and nothing like that. That ain't a coaching thing. That's identification of what the problem is and a theory about how to move about circumstances that are pressure type of thing. If for some reason I'm moving the wrong direction in what it is that I'm doing, then I can't expect that people are looking at me saying, well, he's just a rookie. No. I am not identifying the direction I'm supposed to be going in, whether I've been here for 8 years or 5 minutes. I'm trying to do the wrong things. And maybe someone may say, okay, it's pressure that's getting to him. Maybe that's why his decision making is messing up. Okay, I don't know nothing about that. But from my position, I gotta ask, are you incapable? of making proper decisions based on what it is that's happening to you? Or do you have some philosophy about how to go about the entire war that leaves what's happening to you to happen to you? Because you're too afraid of the big old knockout blow. You letting your eyes stay open right here, putting to punch that area while they, you know what I mean? You worried about the gut punch that's gonna break your rib, and they keep tagging your eyeball out in a punching match. Like, come on, man. Block what's being left open. Because that's what's gonna knock you out. You can worry about that other punch all you want. That's the one that's knocking you. That's the one that's gonna lose you the match. You see what I'm saying? That's the type of stuff that Darvin just gotta have a philosophy change in order to win these matchups, because he keep losing in ways like this. We ain't lose against the Memphis Grizzlies for no other reason than he did not adjust his three-point defense, because he was too fearful of Ja Morant going off when Ja Morant wasn't going off. Although Ja Morant started to go off once he started realizing that Marcus Smart was hitting 9 threes and he could have more space to do what he did. Now, if we would have slowed down Marcus Smart, it would have expedited the need for Ja Morant to step into what he needed to do. Maybe it would have been colder because he didn't do it under comfort and the flow of the game. You would have forced him into having to be that guy, because you would have shut off Marcus Smart from hitting all them damn threes. And who's to say Marcus Smart even stops shooting threes when the defense changes? Now he starts bricking threes, changes the game entirely. Point is, you got to put the onus on somebody else. Just like we're saying in regards to the GM. That's the story with Darvin Ham. Put the onus on others. Stop leaving yourself open based on fears of being left open. In every way, shape, and form. It's really the problem. It's a philosophy issue about how to approach the fight I'm in. You see it in how he's handling his coaching job in multiple facets. Like, bro, attack what's attacking you. Don't worry about that, and that, and the possibility of that and that. And certainly don't look at the entire fight as a whole saying, they're going to do this, so this is what we're going to do. And then when they start making adjustments, you don't adjust out of that. You got to counter, fool. If they properly identify what you're doing early and they counter against it, why wouldn't you think in this field of battle it's not incumbent upon you to counter? That's the part that doesn't also make any damn sense. This fool is weaving and bobbing. Every time I swing my hook, he weaving. Don't you think it's time to switch up what we're doing? We can return to the hook when he stops dodging it on rhythm, but you keep swinging it on damn rhythm. Now maybe you can argue that the same applies to what it is I'm suggesting, which is him use the same starting lineup every day. Fair. There's no perfect science to this. But what I'm telling you is this. You got to find a sweet medium between the two. As I've already said, I'm not going to use the same starting lineup against the damn Minnesota Timberwolves when they start and Gobert and Towns as I would against the Clippers, who don't have that type of size. I'm never going to do that. That would be the game where I'd implement my change. Otherwise, we're getting back to what we do. Otherwise, it's not going to be no change. And this is the thing that people have to understand about great players. Great players usually find themselves nestled in that medium in a lot of different facets, which is why they're great. They know when to improvise, otherwise they're consistent. They understand that. So if the person who's in charge of moving their piece around doesn't understand that in multiple facets of what he's doing, they're going to grow tired. They're going to grow tired of that person. Because they understand that, which is why they're always successful. LeBron James knows when he needs to improvise. He also knows that consistency is going to make him as great as he is. Consistent. Somebody's weaving, I'm weaving too. Somebody's bobbing, I'm bobbing a different way. Otherwise, consistency. If the person who's in charge of making sure LeBron James is where he needs to be doesn't understand that at all, it becomes a problem, a real problem. And not only is he responsible for Bron, he's also responsible for AD. Two great guys who understand that, who are good at improvising. One thing I love about having Anthony Davis on my team, and I'm serious about this, I've never ever seen anybody read footwork better than him and pump fakes better than him in the paint. Nobody. No Soul, no Kobe, none of them. Red pump fakes better than Anthony. Nobody. That's what I like about Anthony. So when you got a player like that, and you're changing things around him every day, when he's uber gifted at reading fakes. He's going to be frustrated off of the notion of what he's strong at, because at the end of the day, he inherently understands the randomness of improvisation within the fields from which he studies. You understand what I mean by that? Dudes do 4 and 5 pump fakes. He still reads and block the shot. And my coach doesn't even adjust. They're not even throwing 1 pump fake. Think about that. He's not even throwing 1 proverbial pump fake with what it is he's doing. Or he's throwing out all types of random pump fakes that otherwise don't even give him a clear shot. He's not even reacting to what it is that he thinks the defense is doing. He's just doing unnecessary dribble moves, unnecessary pump fakes, even traveling even in regards to what his responsibilities. It's like, no, man, you can't be somebody who has that problem and coach over somebody who literally is a genius at that in a different area. You're going to be a problem. And so these are things that Darvin Ham's like, yo, I do not ever want to disrespect a person's mentality or intellect unless I have absolute evidence for why questioning it would otherwise be in place, as to which you can define it as me questioning his intelligence. But he has shown me that this is to be questioned, man. He showed me that. And like I said, maybe decision making comes from how he handles the pressure. Maybe if the pressure wasn't so bad, he'd have a more clear mind to make better decisions. Okay. Again, outside of my wheelhouse. I don't understand that like I would like to, but I need decisions to be made properly, man. Under this pressure or that pressure, you got to be able to give me consistent, good decision making. Or otherwise, you're just not the guy for the job, man. And I'm telling you, a lot of people want Darvin gone because they were fans of previous coaches. Maybe they liked Frank Vogel. I couldn't stand Frank Vogel. Why? Because he had some of these same problems. He had some of these same problems. When the pressure was on, he didn't make good decisions. When it was time for the team to show up, a lot of times he was nowhere to be found, and then got a lot of credit for AD and Bron dragging him and all of his bad rotations and all his lack of offensive creativity to a championship in the bubble. He was dragged there, fam. It was a bad coach for us. He was a good coach in Indiana when the pressure was different. When the defensive team and Paul George and Ron Artest, whoever was on that squad, he was good for that team. Our team, man, that dude makes all kinds of bad rotational decisions. Just like Darvin, just like Luke. So for me, it's like, I'm not in love with none of those coaches. I'm not saying get rid of Darvin Ham because I want to bring back one of those guys or because I didn't like how they did those guys. I'd have fired them dudes sooner. Luke would have been fired sooner. Vogel would have been fired sooner if I had choices. Just like Darvin probably would have been fired before the last game. So I need people to understand that about me. I wasn't in love with none of them damn coaches. I haven't seen a good Laker coach since Phil Jackson left. And I stand by that. And didn't have one before that. I didn't have one before that. The only time I really liked Laker coach was Phil Jackson. All them other coaches, including Dale Harris, used to piss me off. Dale Harris really pissed me off as a kid because he would call timeouts in the most inopportune time. In the middle of a play, we hit a 3-point shot. He didn't call the timeout when the shot was in the air. That type of stuff, like, yo, what the hell are you doing? Kobe starting in the All-Star game, he can't start for you. Man, if you don't get out of here. So, no, I ain't never like, most of the coaches we had, I ain't really like none of them. Rudy Tomjanovich, he was here for 5 minutes. All of that was bad. The whole thing was bad. He was one of the worst. Byron Scott, I loathed Byron Scott by the time he left, y'all. I could not stand Byron Scott. You understand what I'm saying? Like none of them coaches. Mike Brown, the new Mike Brown, developed. And see, this is where we get back to where a guy is in his tenure. We had Mike Brown in the era where Darvin Ham is now. Mike Brown had only been coaching for a couple years. He hadn't even gotten LeBron yet, if I'm not mistaken, in Cleveland. We had him before that, if I'm not mistaken. Right? He was a young coach. Where Darvin is. Mike Brown now, good. Mike Brown last year, coach of the year. This year, the team ain't doing as good. But, I like Mike Brown now. But Mike Brown that we had, no offensive creativity. That team was as bland as any team we ever had. Way more bland than Frank Vogel. Way more. We talking bland, bro. The offense was just boring. You got Kobe Bryant on the team and the offense is boring. That's what that was at the time. Now, it's one of the best offense, arguably last year, was the Sacramento Kings. He just got to, it's just years later. You know what I'm saying? Years later. After Golden State, after LeBron James in Cleveland. You know what I mean? He's been in situations. Made him better. And I think that's what Darvin Ham needs to be in. More situations to make him better. And 6-7 years down the road, he might be coach of the year for a different situation. Where some of his weaknesses right now will be the strengths that he has then. Just when is the question. When is it in their tenure? And for Darvin Ham, it's year 2. And we kind of need him to be where Mike Brown is now in year 8 or whatever, 7, whatever it is. So you see what I'm saying? It's like those progressions and those mistakes need to be worked out. Maybe he gets those mistakes straightened out soon in time for what our timeline is. But the likelihood is he's going to need a couple more opportunities elsewhere to really become who he is that we think he's going to become, who would otherwise be ready for what it is that we're asking him to do. So that's what I'm here to tell all of you. I'm not a fan of any of them damn coaches the Lakers have had over the last 15 years. Only Phil Jackson. Only Phil Jackson. And that was because Phil Jackson was literally the damn GOAT. Otherwise, the Lakers haven't really done a good job of picking coaches. Really, ever. Really, literally, ever. Pat Riley, that was before my time. Although I refer to Pat Riley in those practices so much, that's because I know what he implements in Miami. Not necessarily understanding too much of what he did with LA, other than to say, we sure won a lot of championships with it. Whole lot. And it was the cream of the crop offense, maybe of the generation. And that Showtime offense. So, for me, it's like, man, look, I just want my team to get a damn good coach for once in their lives. And if it's going to be Darvin Ham, then we just got to get through this era, man. We have to get through this era, and hopefully some of the things that he needs to learn from, he would have learned from already. That's what we hope. If they ain't going to fire him, hopefully we have some massive breakthroughs with this last couple of weeks where people were calling for his job. And he never returns to some of those mistakes again. That's a hope. I don't know if I'm putting any money on that, everybody, but that's my hope. So that's really what I have to say to you. At any rate, I hope I made some sense. At the end of the day, I want to see my team successful. Glad we beat the Clippers more than anything in the world. I am happy that we've won 2 games in a row against the Clippers. Y'all know we haven't done that since Kawhi's been here. We haven't done that since Kawhi and PG came together. We had lost every single game those guys have been a part of as Clippers up until this year. So to be on a 2-game winning streak against those guys is a huge feat. Probably not stated enough. But what I'm here to tell you is we ain't out the woods unless Darvin Ham has learned from the mistakes that he's made with this roster. And then even then, some would tell you that we're not out of the woods because the roster itself needs to be improved. I do think that we could use some improvements. I don't know that the improvements we're pointing at are actually improvements. If you're going to ruin your books by bringing in a Zach LaVine or bringing in a Clint Capella, if it ain't going to make you substantially better, you have made a mistake. I can find a center without overpaying for a guy like Clint's $22 million contract next year. I can find a shooter or a guy who can attack the rim and one of these young guys on the back of a bench ain't getting no role playing time than to spend $40 million on Zach LaVine this upcoming season. You see what I'm saying? Now, maybe I can't. Maybe I'm overstating the simplicity of that. But to be honest with you, I just think that you have to be extremely creative. You really do. You know, because that's all I'm saying to y'all. We got to get a lot more creative than what the other GMs are willing to keep ourselves in a position where we're actually satisfied with what we're doing. And remember, overcorrection is a mistake. We got healthy Bron, healthy AD. They don't need a superstar. They really don't, especially if that superstar is going to be unreliable and in his absence, the team's going to be even worse than it is right now. No. You got to consider that. When did we win a championship? Did we have more than AD and Bron as superstars? No, we did not. We started screwing up the team when we thought we needed to bring in one. Truly. People need to understand that. We just had the right role players around those two guys who could carry everything else. What we don't have right now is a combination of that. And if you think overcorrection is something we want to continue on the process of doing, then we ain't been paying attention to the mistakes of our coach. You got to pay attention to the mistakes of your coach. That's what it really comes down to. He's overcorrecting. You need not to. You move D'Lo, maybe Rui. Definitely move that Gabe Vincent contract. You're not going to miss it, but it is our sore, keeping us from getting more talent at that $15 million range for the next 3 years. We can get that off the books. And you bring back Kyrie Irving. You bring back Bogdanovich. You know what I'm saying? That's all you really do. You go to Charlotte and you go get Nick Richards. You know what I'm saying? But going after Zach LaVine at $40 million so he can give us 15 points on average most nights when he's not healthy, and maybe 25 points when he is, when most of the time he ain't going to be, man, please. If that ain't an overpay, I don't know what is, bro. He's not going to do what it is he's paid to do. We're not even going to expect him to. So why would you sign up for that? People be like, he fits a need. The old Zach LaVine fit a need? Is this Zach LaVine fit anything? No. He just fits in your books really badly. Eating up $40 million of your cap, making the rest of your roster look like Troy Brown. Nah, you don't want that. Remember everybody, that is the key to all of this. It's not about whether or not player can play well. It's about how much is he eating up your cap, keeping your team from being well. You gotta ask yourself that. Because for me, looking at Russell Westbrook last year at $47 million, well, that's why the rest of the team was trash. Looking at Chris Paul at a full-fledged contract in Golden State, that's why they have so many troubles they have. Because he's eating up all the damn cap. Thus, other people who would be making that money, making the fullness of your team, ain't there. So you don't want that dude on your team eating the $47 million, and it ain't got nothing to do with him. It has to do with everybody else not being there because of him, eating up all the damn money. Never lose sight of that. When you lose sight of that, your team sucks. Then you start putting people like Corey Joseph on the damn floor. BDL 44. I thank you all for watching.